Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I will call this regular meeting of Council of the Municipality of Jasper to order for June 4th, 2024. It is 1:30 p.m. And as this is the first meeting of Council for the month of June, and as June is National Indigenous History Month in Canada, and as Jasper and Jasper National Park has a very rich and resilient Indigenous history to be recognized and celebrated. I am honored to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the Municipality of Jasper is on Treaty 6 and 8 territories, as well as the Jasper House Métis District. This land is the traditional territory, meeting ground, gathering place, traveling route, and home for the Dainza, Assiniboine Winawak, Assiniboine Nihawk, Nihayawak, Anishinaabe, Secwepemc, Stoney Nakoda, Mountain Métis, and Métis. Councillors, you have before you today's draft agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or other alterations to be made to the agenda? Councillor Demota.
I do, Your Worship, and I apologize for not getting this in before the deadline for agenda submissions. I would like to alter the agenda a little bit and make agenda item number 10 a closed session HR committee update, and move the current number 10 to 11, so 11 as adjournment.
Thank you for that. Are there any other proposed changes to the agenda? I would like to add also a matter under new business, which would become agenda item 6.5. This would qualify if we had such a provision as urgent business. We don't yet have that in our procedural bylaw. We received a request yesterday for a flag raising to celebrate the National Day of the Philippines. The request was received via email by 2 members of the Filipino community in Jasper. The date that they would like to raise their flag in the municipal flagpole is June 12th, and we will not have another council meeting before June 12th. And our public statement policy requires that such a decision be made by council. So I'm requesting that that matter be added to today's agenda for decision by council today if possible. And I would propose that that matter be added as agenda item 6.5. If there are no other changes, Councillor Demota, could I look to you to make a motion to change the agenda to include those 2 items, your new item 10 and my proposed new item 6.5?
Yeah, I move that council amend today's agenda for the regular meeting of June 4th, 2020.
Thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried, and my motion then to approve the agenda for today's meeting as amended. Councillor Keller-Hurmpy, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We have before us today for approval 2 sets of minutes. First, from the regular meeting of May 1st, pardon me, 21st, 2024. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? If not, I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of May 21st, 2024 regular council meeting as presented. Deputy Mayor Waxer, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We also have for approval the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of May 28th, 2024. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? If not, may I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of the May 28, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting as presented? Councillor Keller-Rampe, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us through the formal part of the agenda. Agenda item 4, delegations. We have done, there are no residents in attendance to join us, so no delegations from the floor. Takes us to agenda item 5, correspondence. We have a letter from Jasper ACFA, Habitat for the Arts, and the Library Board, and the Jasper Artists Guild. Replicated in the agenda. Is there any position by administration on this matter? Discussion from councillors? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe this is a second request that have come from the occupants of the building here requesting a fountain to be installed. And it does make sense given the points that were brought up in the letter. And it would be something that I would support in order for us to move forward with reducing the amount of plastic bottles used up in our area, and also just to assist the people who use the facility.
Thank you, Councillor Melnick. Any other comments? Councillor Waxer.
Just that I would echo Councillor Melnick's comments that it does seem like an environmentally friendly initiative, and that and given that we have lots of residents who use the facility and would reduce the use of the one-use bottles.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. Councillor Keller-Rampe.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, through you to administration. And would there be area in the budget for this?
Mayor Ireland, through to Councillor Keller-Rampe. I can't really speak to this in Director Reid's absence, but I think that was trying to formulate a position from administration on this, and whether it could be accommodated within the operating budget or whether it would require a capital investment would probably be the question on our end, which would dictate sort of the timeline if council was supportive of the request. And I guess you could refer the matter to administration, and we could come back to you with whether it's operating or capital, and therefore the associated timeline.
Thank you for that. I'm also in favor of doing this.
Thank you. Councillor Demoda.
Well, regardless of having any room in the budget, I was going to say is nothing like a community barbecue to get people together. What a great thing to experience on the weekend with the generator fundraiser. I know that that's probably coming up on someone's report here later on, but I just want to say that you know, regardless of how we approach this, I found that a really rewarding gathering this weekend. So I look forward to more of those. I think we should be doing more. Thanks.
Thank you all. Anybody want to propose a motion? Which could, I suppose, based on Director Godon's comments, be a motion of support in principle and a referral to administration to come back with a report as to costs and budget allocation. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would be happy to make that motion to direct administration to come back to council with the cost and feasibility of installing this fountain facility in the Jasper Library and Cultural Center. And I think just on a timeline that would work for administration. I don't want to set any dates, but you know, in a reasonable timeline to come back to us.
Thank you for that. Councillor Melnick, is there any debate? Motion is clear enough to administration. I will call a question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6, new business. Appointments to Regional Assessment Board. That comes to council as a recommendation from Committee of the Whole from a week ago. Is there any need for further discussion by councillors relative to the matter? If not, I would look to a councillor for a motion or two. Deputy Mayor Waxer.
I make the motion that council appoint Rhonda Morgan as the designated clerk for the Regional Assessment Review Board for West Yellowhead for a 1-year term starting June 1st, 2024.
Thank you for that. Is there any debate? Call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried.
And I'll make a second motion that council appoint Lee Beamish of Hinton as the designated chair for the Regional Assessment Review Board for West Yellowhead for a 1-year term starting June 1st, 2024. The designated chair's remuneration and expenses will follow the Town of Hinton's council remuneration policy.
Thank you for that motion, Deputy Mayor Waxer. Is there any debate? I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6.2, annual employee housing report. Again, a matter which was before Committee of the Whole last week and comes to council by way of recommendation from Committee of the Whole. Discussion, further discussion with respect to this item, or is there a councillor prepared with a motion? Councillor Keller-Harvey.
Well, last week we were kind of divided. There was a 3-3 on one of the motions where we thought the increase should go over 2 years. And we moved it forward to this meeting for more input. I still feel that. Councillor Demota made the recommendation last week for the increase to go over 2 years. And a 9%, 10% increase is quite a bit. And I just feel that I worry that if we go that 10%, are we setting a trend? I think, you know, for any one household, 10% increase is quite a lot. So if we had it over 2 years and then over the course of going forward, that an annual increase is set in order to eventually bring us up to where we need to be.
Thank you for that. Councillor Demota.
You know, and we've had a week to think about it, and you know, there was some argument that there are staff from the municipality that have to rent in the free market, and it's a lot higher, and then you know, you get a benefit by renting from the municipality, and you know, there's a little there can be some, you know, I guess built animosity that way, or just, you know, I think that regardless of what the scenario is, to hit people that are currently renting with that type of increase overnight, basically, I know it's not overnight, but I think that's a big jump, considering, you know, 3 years ago it went up 22% in some, right? So like when we got the statistics there, that's a pretty big jump. So like for somebody to go up almost $5,000 in a year, you know, like $4,000, I think it's a pretty big jump for somebody. And then like 3 years later, you know, I understand that, you know, there are different dynamics within different renters and stuff like that. At the same time, it's about principle, and I'm still standing behind my thing. Like, you know, I wish that we maybe would have taken an approach with that other increase to kind of ease people in over 3 years as opposed to doing that jump. And, you know, around the same time, we were advocating for, you know, some kind of rent controls in the province, and we were seeing other private agencies or private entities increasing their rents by a substantial amount. I think that's too much to do, and I'm with Councillor Keller MP on that one. I don't mean to belabor the issue. I'm not changing the way I'm.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. Last week, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the motion made was to 4.54% over 2 years. But when I look in the policy, I feel it has to be done each year. So I wonder if, was it 10% over 2 years? But I do think that this report has to come back annually, like it's an annual thing. So I wonder if we could then, because I also still support spreading it out, and for all the reasons that Councillor Keller MP and Councillor Demota have spoken to. I'm looking for clarity, maybe administration or with the mayor, if the motion made last week was to spread it over 2 years, but maybe that doesn't work because we have to review it annually. Maybe the motion made just to do with 4% for this year, or are we still? Because I know it was defeated, so you can't make the motion again for a certain amount of time. I'm just looking for some.
That was a committee motion.
If your question is, could council at this time make a recommendation, the same recommendation that was defeated over a 2-year period? I think we could waive. We're waiving the policy in any event. So if we do it for 1 year or 2 years, I'm not sure that I see any difference in that. Councillor DeVon?
If I may, I know Director Nadal wanted to say something, but I wanted to say that was a committee recommendation to council.
Yes.
And I think that wasn't a decision-making process here where that got advanced and that got defeated at committee. But that doesn't, to me, I don't think that we can make that motion again at the council table. If we need to go and rescind or revisit that one in the way that you recommended, then we can go. But I think that we need to review the policy as well and maybe establish something to have a particular set numbers in there that would indicate an annual increase, or it would come back to council every year in a different process. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Director DeVon?
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I agree with Councillor Demota's interpretation of the motion that was defeated last week was a committee recommendation to council, not a substantive vote on the matter. I mean, that's my interpretation anyway. And further to Councillor Hall's question about the policy, I believe the policy says based on market rates, which are to be determined annually with support from local real estate agents, I believe is how Ms. Pelletier came up with that number. The rent would be, oh, there's Liam. I just got Liam. The policy says it will be to a maximum of 30% of the employee's wage, or I believe it's 15% below market value. And so as part of the annual report that comes from the housing coordinator, those numbers will be presented to council. And in the absence of a motion, that increase would just flow through. The reason this came with a request to council is because administration was recommending that this process be varied. So it's a variation from the policy, whether you decide to implement the recommendation, which I believe was 9% of an increase, or you might choose a different number, 4.55, whatever it might be. Those are council's policies. Council can change their policy or vote to vary the policy, which is the request here. Whatever the number is up to council, and whether you want to do it for 1 year or 2 years, you could lock yourselves in for next year, but you could also just deal with the first year and then take the opportunity to revisit again when it comes next year. So your options are there, and I saw some nods from Ms. Pelletier, so by all means, feel free to jump in if recognized by the chair, of course, but we also have our housing coordinator available for any questions.
Councillor Wilson?
I'm not in support of reducing the recommended increase. I think 9% is an acceptable increase. I'm looking at the numbers, and the two units that are affected, there's only 2 units, they are management positions. And there is still that 30% of the salary worked into that as well. But if we're looking at 1251, Cabin Creek, with the 9% increase, they're still paying $350 less than market. And if we're looking at the 895 Banal, a 4-bedroom duplex, that individual is paying $1,200 less than market. They didn't have an increase last year. I feel that it's acceptable to increase the 9% currently, because we know that it should be a fair amount higher. And the more vulnerable scenario is that Swift, number 3 Swift Crescent, $700 a room is not changing. And I think that's acceptable. So I'm not in support of any other motion but the recommended.
Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did want to recognize Leanne Pelletier as our housing coordinator and thank her for some additional information she provided to council in the last week as it related to where we were back in December of 2021. I know Councillor Demota referred to a 22% increase that occurred in 2022. And I do not believe that affected the current tenant. I believe that there was a change in tenant when that was done. Last week, I was in favor of increasing the rates by the 9% this year. But I would look favorably on reducing that increase to something more in the range of 4.5% this year and review it again next year. It is a bit of a hit. And, you know, it is market rates can be changed over time as additional rental stock comes onto the market. We may find that rental rates will stabilize and we may find ourselves maybe ahead of the game. So I would be happy to entertain a motion which for 1 year we see an increase of 4.5% as opposed to the 9% that I voted for last week.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I know I already spoke, but I didn't get to what I actually wanted to say. But I'm not comfortable with a 9% increase because I don't believe our staff have been given a 9% increase in wages. I'd also maybe argue that, you know, market rates and 30% of your income, I would say maybe it needs to be 20%. Like, things are so expensive now. Like utilities, groceries, things have really gone up. And I think a 9% increase in someone's rent, and I know that it's below market value already, is just going to be an additional 9%. Like, they're going to have to come up with that money somehow. And I'm okay to spread it out over a couple of years because I absolutely want to get to, you know, the rate. The rate, but I just don't feel comfortable doing it all in 1 year. I just think it's a lot. And I don't believe, I know we just signed our collective agreement, but I don't believe everyone got a 9% raise in wages.
Councillor Wilson.
No, they didn't, but certain people are benefiting from this and certain people aren't. And I feel it's that's not equal. It's not, so I'm uncomfortable supplying housing for municipal staff for any extended period of time myself. I think we should supply it as transitional housing and then, you know, everybody moves into the community and finds their situation. We are benefiting certain staff more than others in this scenario, and it's exasperated when it's $1,200 less or $350 less than what every other staff member is paying.
Councillor Kelleher.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. Well, our duplex in 2021, we gave a 24% increase. There was no increase last year, according to the new stats we got. And that's a lot. And I agree with Councillor Hall. You know, we went to AUMA, was it last year, the year before, we talked about how there is a rent control in BC and Ontario and other areas. A lot of employers in this town supply housing. You have to, because there is no other housing. And why are we any different as a municipality? We have 130 employees. We're just like every other employer, and I think we need to lead just like we want to be a fair employer with wage. I think we have to be a fair employer with rent also.
I'll go first to Councillor Demota and then Councillor Hall.
Okay. I'd like to move that the council provide a waiver from policy D-116 and authorize the 2024 staff accommodation rates or half of what was proposed by administration as an increase. Because they're different, and it says 9% on the bottom, but I'm recommending half, so.
I just making sure that council has clarity.
So we have the option, if there are changes for next year, to revisit that again. So just half of what was proposed.
And for 1 year.
For 1 year.
Are councillors content that they understand the intent of the motion? Councillor Wilson?
Why would there be a number specified, like 4.5, if that was?
Yeah.
Like, I think with the number.
I'm just, I'm pulling up the chart from the proposal last week. Okay. That's a friendly amendment. Reread the motion. Move the council provide a waiver from policy D-116 and authorize the 2024 staff accommodation rates with a 4.5% increase for 2024. 4.5.
Right. Thank you for that restated motion. Councillor Demota, your motion, you can speak to it first if you wish.
Everybody has a valid argument, including Councillor Wilson, and you know, even if I don't agree with it, I think the discussion is really good, and I'm glad we're having this debate public now. And now that we've changed over to have a municipal housing corporation, we have the information in front of us, and we can help aid this. We might be behind, and this is a situation that the municipality, you know, and including us, got ourselves into. And I think. Just like with other motions that we've tried to make in the past, taking easy steps to correct this is the right way to go, as opposed to slapping a bigger increase. So again, like valid points. I think for not only for optics, but it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak to the motion? Deputy Mayor Waxer?
I like Councillor Melnick voted last week in favor of the 1%, but on reflection and having looked at the increases from 2022 at a 24% increase or a 22% increase is a substantial amount, and the two amounts together would come up to about $7,500 a year. And I know that we've in the past had difficulty recruiting people to the director and management levels from out of the community because it is an expensive community to live in. And I think it's takes time for people to adjust. And I believe our policy does ask that people use it as transition housing for a period of time. So and again, I have some conflicted feelings because all that Councillor Wilson spoke to, I can kind of agree with it as well. So it's not, this isn't an easy decision, but I think that I will vote in favor of Councillor Demota's comment. Motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. I also will support the motion. And to be clear, I want to get to the 9%. And I want to get to where we should be, but I'm not comfortable doing it all this year. I just want to give, I think it's important that the municipal staff have a chance to catch up to this increase and kind of figure out their new bill structure.
I see no other hands, so I will speak to the motion. And I am inclined to vote opposed to the motion for reasons stated by Councillor Wilson. But beyond that, I think this brings to light the really challenging position that we're in. I mean, I appreciate viewing this from the perspective of a municipal employee. But we are the holders of public property and we are trustees for shareholders who are taxpayers. We issued them an 8.5% increase. We didn't discuss whether they had seen that increase in their wages. And now we are asking every other taxpayer to subsidize people who are not taxpayers by virtue of the fact that they are renters. They weren't subject directly to a tax increase. They are renting from the municipality. And they're going to have their rents further subsidized by our tax-paying public. I find that to be a real challenge after we have just gone through the whole process of putting an 8.5% increase on every other taxpayer. I think we have to look at this in part from our obligation as trustees of public property. We are already losing money on our rental properties. I think taxpayers could shake their heads and wonder how that can be, that we can't even get to cost recovery on our units. And if we defer this, we won't make it up in 2 years because there'll be further increases next year and we'll just get farther behind. A 9% increase at this time is already, I think, a benefit to our staff and a recognition that other taxpayers should not have to subsidize rents which are already subsidized. I mean, our policy says that the maximum will be the lower of 85% of market rate or 30% of the employee's wage. So they are protected. We don't expect that from private renters. And yes, we have supported rent controls, but we don't expect the private sector to necessarily be losing money on accommodations as we have been doing. So yes, it's a bit hard to our employees and I feel for that. But on the other hand, we are the trustees of this property on behalf of our tax-paying public, and we owe something to them to try and get at least cost recovery. So I am opposed to extending this over 2 years and will vote opposed to the motion. Councillor Keller-Granby, I will allow you to close.
Just on one of your points there, Maryland, we talk about cost recovery. We've had one side of the duplex with nobody in it for 2 years. That's a loss of money that we're allowing as the trustees. And at the same time, we're renting a house. I know the employees pay for it, but when it's not full, the taxpayers are paying for that too. So I think we need to clean it up both ends, but I don't think us losing that money should be at the cost of our employees living there. I think we have to be fair all around.
Councillor Melvin?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the comments as it relates to rental housing. And I appreciate where Councillor Keller MP is coming from with a vacant property where we are losing money. One of the many challenges we have as council and administration is to manage a municipality holistically, and retaining employees is critical, especially in the senior management positions, because the cost of recruitment and the costs associated to replace individuals should they decide to leave could far outweigh whatever rental increases that we might gain. I certainly stand by the 4.5%. I made a change in my mind, but I'm looking at this as a holistic overall management of the municipality and our human resources and capital resources.
Thank you, Councillor Melvin. Councillor Demoda, do you wish to close?
We do if everyone's spoken already. Okay, like really good debate, and I've kind of had me teetering a little bit there, but I'm still on solid ground here. So I understand Your Worship about discussing the budget increase. It's like not a personal tax increase. Like I don't think that the 8.5, like for me personally or other taxpayers, every single taxpayer, their taxes went up 8.5%. I mean, our overall budget did. So that affects people differently, and I appreciate that argument. The second part is, we have a year to work this out. So if next year it has to be 7%, like at least we're easing it in, and what we need to get to someplace where, we could be close to market. And I'm just saying that because of the other arguments on recruiting and retaining staff. If you're going to get a higher level director, if positions change or something like that, or we're getting new staff here that are qualified, very often what we've observed is that those positions, sometimes those people with those qualifications are interviewing here and in other places, and they can get more money in other places. So, there has to be a little bit of give, and to provide good service for the community. Sometimes that might come into our budget considerations, and that might be subsidizing a high level director or manager or staff with experience that we need here in this community. So for all those arguments, I think that we need to get a stronger policy and address a lot of the discussions that we had here today, just to make things better for us in the future. I think I would really appreciate all the input that I heard here today, and I think it's everybody's expressions are valid. Thank you.
Thank you for closing debate. Councillor Demoda, I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? There are two opposed. There are two opposed. That motion is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6.3, the 2024 tax rate bylaw, which comes to us for third reading, having now received Parks Canada's certification. Is there a councillor prepared to make a motion that council give a third reading to bylaw number 261, the 2024 tax rate bylaw? Councillor Keller MP, thank you. Ready to debate? Councillor Melvin.
Thank you, Your Worship. Before we vote, I do want to refer back to our discussions when we looked at this particular bylaw, and we had two options. And at that time, I had encouraged individuals to take a look at the two options and to calculate, since we had the proposed mill rates in front of us, to go back to their assessment that was mailed out and see what the difference would be between the two different options. And, I did something to take a look at my personal circumstance. And, you know, in my personal circumstance, full disclosure, the actual value of my property dropped by $3,200 on the assessment. Assessments are, we can go into a long dissertation about how assessments are made based on sales and sales of similar units and so on, improvements to the property, et cetera, et cetera. Some other individuals may have their property tax or their property assessment go up by $15,000 or $20,000. So everything is going to affect everybody differently. Under the current tax bylaw, between Evergreen and education and the municipal tax, my tax year over year is going to go up $31. It's about a cup of coffee a month. We talked about the 4.1 to 1 split and the mill rates which would have applied to that. Well, that only would have moved my property tax to $153 more a year, or about 3 cups of coffee a month. I want to make this point because I think we do have to, we are going to have an opportunity to look at this. Everyone's going to be affected differently. We are going to have people saying that my taxes went up $40 or 40%. You know, mine not so much. The other thing is you could look at things over 3 years, 5 years. And in this instant, I looked at things over 12 years. So from 2012 to now, just my municipal tax increase on average year over year has gone up 3.35% with this current tax bylaw. And I'd encourage residents to take a more holistic view, to look back over the history of what the municipality is doing. Everyone's going to be affected differently. Some people are going to be affected more. Some people are going to be affected less. And just an interesting point, it did the same thing with our education tax. That's gone up on average over 12 years, 4%. So year over year, 4% more. And I make these comments because I know after we pass this bylaw, we are going to get a bunch of reaction about, you know, you had an 8.9% overall tax increase in municipality. Some people are going to be affected more. Some people are going to be affected less. The non-residential community is going to pick up a good portion of this. And I think people just need to understand everyone's affected differently. And by making broad statements in the community, sometimes is not helpful in a discussion. And thank you for the opportunity to give the public and council my observation based on my own circumstance.
Thank you, Councillor Malik. Councillor Demota.
Yeah, and if you get really good at percolating coffee, it gets cheaper too, if you do it that way, right? Especially if it's got a metal filter, because then you're leaving out a lot of variables. Okay, so really good points by Councillor Melnick, and I'm glad that we, heard that information. What a cup of coffee might mean to a resident could be a hot water tank to another, or even a boiler for a bigger business. So, all those things that they do come into play here. I do have a question to administration from through your worship to Director Nadeau and maybe Director Malinchuk. Since our discussions last week, I know that we hadn't heard from the community on this discussion. Had we got any feedback at all from anyone in the community, regardless of its residential or business representatives, agencies?
Mayor Ireland, through to Councillor Demota, we have not received anything through the official channels, so info at or any of our regular processes. And I'm also hearing from Director Malinchuk that she has not heard anything either.
That's good. I'm a little bit more comfortable now moving forward, and I'm glad that we had the time and the discussion to have that we had. Thank you.
If there is no further debate, just before I call the question, I want to thank Councillor Melnick. You did issue a bit of a challenge 2 weeks ago, and you responded to your own challenge. That was perfect. Thank you. Councillor Keller-Hempy, put the motion forward for third reading of bylaw number 261. The 2024 tax rate bylaw. Call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6.4. An appointed council member on the Jasper Food Alliance Committee, again, coming to council by way of recommendation from Committee of the Whole. Any further discussion on this topic, or is there a councillor prepared to make the motion? Councillor Demota?
I'm not prepared to make a motion, but you know, I had some discussion on this, and you know, I had a discussion with a couple of other councillors, I guess, and so it got me thinking that, you know, I think we've gone down this path a couple of times already, and just they're going to keep coming. And I appreciate the request for the Food Alliance, but I think that council committees appointed by the mayor, I think committees that I think we should be assigned on, like, we're really busy. And I'm not saying that we don't have time to do this. I'm just saying that I see our commitments already, and how much of a representation on this particular committee is going to have a direct influence on regular council decisions. You know, so like when we start broadening, you know, our commitments, I'm just wondering if we're taxing our obligations, and are we being as effective as we can be as councillors? So I'm not prepared to vote in favor of this particularly because of that, and it has nothing to do with the group at all. It's the overall principle in question. Am I speaking to the right thing?
There is not yet a motion. Any other comments regarding the recommendation before it becomes a motion, or to make the motion? Deputy Mayor Waxer?
I'm happy to make the motion that council appoint one councillor and one alternative to the Jasper Food Alliance Committee.
Thank you for the motion, Deputy Mayor Waxer. Any debate? Go ahead and speak to the motion.
I'll speak to the motion, just that from anecdotally and from what I hear in the community and from the food bank, I think food security is a really critical issue in the community at this point, and the taxing of those organizations. So it may not be a long-term commitment, but at this point, I think it's a critical piece, a critical part of our community, and that I think more people at the table may come up with more viable solutions.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. Councillor Wilson?
Correct me if I'm wrong, do we not have a staff member that has a third of their position to address issues around food and food alliance? I'm not sure the exact title, but we already do have administration involved, I think.
Mayor Ireland, through the Councillor Wilson, I believe that is correct. There is a community development coordinator position in the community development department that is tasked with food security as one of the items, so is Indigenous relations, public engagement. And I think there's maybe some flex for grant funded initiatives that might differ, but yes, that is part of someone's job description. And I believe it was presented at Committee of the Whole last week with council doesn't have a direct financial external group relationship with the group in question, but through funding a staff position dedicated to working on that file, it was presented as a council funding of that group through a staff member.
Any other debate? Councillor Demota?
again, just to have the discussion and the debate, what type of quality, would having a council member on this committee bring to the actual discussion and operations of what the committee looks over, and then vice versa, how effective is that going to be coming back to council? I'm just talking about the overall effectiveness and what's the overall purpose. You know, I read over the recommendation, and I understand having a collaborative relationship, but what's the overall purpose of what this is going to achieve? If I'm just asking for clarity, and I just want to hear feedback, and you know, even if it's from other councillors and your opinion. What's the goal here?
Looks like he's looking directly at me.
I'm looking at everybody. You just made eye contact with me, so.
I guess my thought is that council acknowledges this to be one of the important topics that our community is grappling with at this point, and that is interested in participating in the process of developing solutions.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I wonder if adding to the end of the recommendation for a 1-year term might make, because this is maybe an emergent issue, right? If that would make council who's not quite sure a bit more comfortable.
Sorry, there's a motion on it.
Yes, I believe that was from Deputy Mayor Waxer, and that sounded a bit like a suggestion of a friendly amendment.
And I'm totally comfortable with that.
Okay, so the friendly amendment has been accepted. So the motion is as it was worded for a 1-year term to be added. Go ahead, Councillor.
All right, so I guess I was asking for clarification earlier, and just to enter into debate here. We're going to be having an organizational meeting again in October, so I guess we probably should have a commencement and date on this if we're going to do a 1-year term. As of what date, or you know, for review once we get to the organizational meeting, and then we can have a further discussion there and how much further we want to do it. Because if we have a councillor that and an alternate that get a feel for the next few months on what this is like, and then have a better understanding of what this brings at our organizational meeting, and then we can have a broader discussion there and say, hey, you know what, this is something really good, and you know, we should go forward with this. Or we might get the idea that, you know, maybe a representation on this board on this committee isn't really advancing anything. So I think, you know, we've got a few months to work that out. Just an idea.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. According to their terms of reference, they meet 4 times a year. So I just wonder if that would even be enough time to get a feel for anything. It's 4 months until October. So I'm not really sure where to go from this. So yes, I do agree there needs to be some kind of date.
Just to speak to the motion, and I cannot directly answer your question, Councillor Demota, but I share your earlier concern about the workload for council and where this could lead. I have less concern over this particular request because I see the Jasper Food Alliance Committee as a bit of an umbrella organization. But within that, we could get requests from potentially the Jasper Local Food Group, if that's the correct name, the Food Recovery Group, potentially Food Bank. There are any number of groups under the umbrella of food security that could come forward, and the council has to be careful because we do have a lot of committee assignments already, and our policy is permissive. We can agree to respond to any number of requests, but if we don't set some limits, we are going to be overwhelmed, and it'll be as a result of our own decisions. So I think we have to be careful, but again, this is a bit of an umbrella organization, but it's not the only one. We recently supported the men's shed. We haven't been asked to appoint somebody yet, but we could be asked to appoint to any number of groups, and we cannot do them all. So we have to be, I think, protective of our own time and how we will influence outcomes. And I think you're right on that. To the extent that this is an umbrella organization for food security, we are engaged with a staff member as we are with community conversations. I can see a greater attachment to this than I might see to others. And if it's limited in time till we can get a sense of it, I think I will support the motion, but I do so with some reservations because I am aware of the challenge we present to ourselves by just responding with a yes to every request to appoint somebody to other committees within the community, which are not council committees. Councillor Demota?
Just for clarity, recently, didn't we have the Folk and Blues Society? Is that what they're still called? Did we just say no recently? Okay. Yeah, just to me, I know this is we have an I want to say an epidemic across the country with housing and food security, and it's very apparent in our community, especially in the colder months. And I think that, you know, I totally understand it. You know, I've been swayed to vote in favor. I think that, you know, if we have a volunteer councillor that's committed to doing this and wants to step forward, and I think I know where that's coming from, then I'll support you for sure. You know, I think I totally get it, but I think it's just something exactly to what the mayor related to, and I think I'll support this for now, and then we'll see how it goes.
Deputy Mayor Waxer?
I should have spoken to this earlier. The umbrella piece, I think, is the fact that all of those groups have their own group, their own organizations, their own structures. And we're not being asked to join one or the other, but this is a discussion on food security where they've all given their time to sit together and come up with solutions. And it may not be it isn't a formalized group. They're just asking for a council voice at the umbrella table where each of those organizations are also giving up their time to be involved in developing community solutions, which is why I feel positive about the concept.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. Any further debate? I should accept that as closing debate, I suppose, and everybody's had a full opportunity. So I will call the question of the motion as amended by amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? There is one opposed. That motion is carried. That takes us to the additional item 6.5. Maybe not. Director Nadon.
Mayor Arlen, before you move on, may I suggest that you formally appoint a councillor and an alternate so we don't have to revisit this at a future meeting?
The motion we just voted on says that the council will appoint. Who does council appoint? Is there a volunteer? I see. I move the nomination cease.
Yeah, I was going to nominate, but you've got a volunteer, so.
It also calls for an alternate. All right, to the extent that I think our procedure bylaw requires that I recommend and council approve appointments, I recommend that council appoint Deputy Mayor Waxer as the representative to the Jasper Food Alliance Committee and appoint Councillor Hall as the alternate. In the absence of objection, I will make that appointment. As stated. Maybe we need a motion. And I directed it on, feels we need a motion. Can somebody make a motion that Councillor Waxer, the Deputy Mayor Waxer be appointed as a representative and Councillor Hall appointed as the alternate? I make that motion. Thank you for that. Councillor Keller-Hempy, all those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you, Director McDonald. Now we can go to 6.5. And because I raised that, perhaps I will relinquish the chair to Deputy Mayor Waxer and make a motion that council approve the raising of the flag of the Philippines on a municipal flagpole at the Emergency Services Building on June 12th, 2024, as an act of inclusion and respect and support for Jasper's Filipino community. And to speak to the motion again, as I introduced it earlier, we received an email, I think it was from 2 members, residents of Jasper, who are members of the Filipino community, but it may have been, and I looked to Ms. Acorn, if you've got a copy of the email, is it on behalf of the association or just the individuals?
Jasper Filipino Canadian Community.
So 2 individuals representing the local Filipino community, which I don't have confirmed numbers, but speaking at their engagements as I do occasionally, I would say there are close to 400 residents of Jasper who identify as Filipino Canadians. They are a significant part of our community and our workforce in particular. It is their National Day and they would celebrate that. I would speak in favor of allowing them to have their national flag raised on the municipal flag on June 12th to recognize their contribution to our community by applying their national flag.
Any debate or questions? I'll call the question then. All in favor? Motion carried unanimously.
Receive the chair. That takes us to agenda item 7, notices of motion. We have none. Agenda item 8. Councillor reports. Are there any councillor reports? Councillor Keller-Hempy.
Thank you, Mayor Arlen. Last Friday, I attended the Trans-Canada Yellowhead Highway AGM in Edmonton. It was an excellent meeting. It was probably one of the best I have been to. They have formed a relationship with, and our new map that's coming out that connects us from Manitoba to BC will have all the Indigenous tourism spots on this map. So that is very exciting. We also had a number of awards presented. So overall, the association is really going forward. A lot of updates on the highways. There will be some work done in the next year between Hinton and Edson, and Edson and Edmonton, also on Highway 16. On Saturday, I attended our fundraiser for the generator, and I'd like to thank our community. It was so well attended. Councillor Demoto, Waxer, and Melnick also joined me at the fundraiser. We made over $5,000, and we had a donation from Jasper Masons of $25,000, and the Frabosco family came and gave us $10,000. So our fundraiser is going really well. We're hoping that we will have reached our goal by the end of June. So that you all know, we have the Royal Canadian Legion has put on a 50-50. and it's now over 7,500. It goes till June 14th, and half will go to the generator and half will go to the individual that wins. We also just put on an online auction that will go to June 28th, and then it will go to a live auction at the sponsors dinner at Alpine Summit on June 28th.
Thank you for that. Do you wish to speak to that, or?
Yeah, I have a question for Councillor Keller-Murphy. I forgot, how much are the 50/50 tickets?
I believe they're 10, 20, 50, 100. It's online. There's a number.
Well, I think as council, we should buy a collective ticket, and Jasper Community Council, we collectively buy one, because I know we're not going home with the money. So, I mean, if we win, all the money's going back in, so.
And at this stage, we're around 75 to 80,000 in the bank. So, and I have to say, our community has been absolutely marvelous, stepping up businesses, the residents, the families of the residents in Alpine Summit. You know, it was awesome there on Saturday. We had so many people come out, but we've had so many donations. It's just been incredible. I just want to thank everybody within our community.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. Just a question for Councillor Keller-Murphy. What is the goal, the end goal?
We started with 160. We're going to get the generator for 126.5, and that's kind of 120 was our goal. We moved it down to that. Evergreen's got a grant, and Evergreen is putting in for all the engineering, all the development permits, the inputting of it, which is well over another 100,000, but that is, we won't be doing any of that. So we're hoping to get 126. If Evergreen said that if we get to, you know, 100 to 120, they will cover the rest. If we raise anything above that, we're also going to move the current generator that's at Alpine Summit over to the Manor. So we will get that installed also over at the Manor, which Evergreen will also take care of.
Thank you. I have reports as well. So this morning, the legislative committee met for a monthly meeting, and just to give a bit of an update to council on what we're doing. If you ever want to learn all about the procedure bylaw, join the legislative committee and decide to go over it with a fine-tooth comb, which is what we've been doing. We're up to part 5. So I think at this point, if council has gone through it and looked at it and have any ideas or concerns or places where you think there could be some adjustments, please feel free to reach out to any of us on the committee, myself or Mayor Ireland or Councillor Demota. But today felt like a bit of a turning point where the light at the end of the tunnel, maybe we can see it like a pin. Well, dark tunnel, but there are some lights in the tunnel. And yeah, so if any of the other members of the committee wanted to add anything.
I want to say that I don't like to say that I like some committees over the others. Like I feel very blessed with the appointments that I have right now, and this has been a very enjoyable process. And I think a lot of the meat that we have here, well, I know all of it, has come from a lot of work from administration. So from Bill through to Director Neto and Emma. Like we have some really good stuff here, and we've got some quality, processes that have come from other communities that we've cleaned out and kind of made we're in the process of making a really good, I feel procedure bylaw that's a Jasper made one, and I'm looking forward to the outcome. It does take a long time, and we did have a contractor that was working on it for us that couldn't continue, so a lot of the workload has gone on to our administration and doing a fantastic job. Thank you.
I also wanted to add that it's really been, I also really enjoy this committee, and watching it come together, and today felt like it's really starting to come together, and this will probably be done by the end of our term, I hope. But no, and I also want to thank administration. I know it's a lot of work, and I feel like Director Don is in front of her computer all week and brought some really good stuff to us today. So thank you.
Deputy Mayor Waxman.
Last week I attended a committee meeting that was advertised for the Alberta Munis on the welcoming and inclusive communities. And I wanted, in one of the small group sessions, I raised our practice of having an inclusion consideration on the request for decision, and there was a huge amount of positive reaction to that. Other communities were impressed, and the moderator really considered asked that other as well. I also we've got to take the opportunity to express appreciation to Director Brickhead and his staff for being well prepared at each of these meetings. And the committee is currently working on a profile of the community, and we're had an embarrassment of riches of things to crow about in that process.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you. Today we have the Community Futures Business Walk here in the municipality with a number of chamber members and other members such as the Employment Center, as well as Councillor Wilson, Hall, Waxer, and myself participating during the day for various parts. I think it was probably quite successful and always enlightening when you have an opportunity to talk to various businesses. And I'll close with 4 of us will be attending the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in Calgary. Councillors Waxer, Hall, Keller, MP, and myself will be departing tomorrow. We'll be back next Sunday or Monday.
Thank you for that. Councillor Melnick, any other reports? I will just add to Councillor Hall's report to the Legislative Committee, lest you think that the procedure bylaw is the only thing.
Right.
It is not. It does occupy much of our time. But one of the things that if we resolve today, which will come to committee soon, is the question of the Jasper Municipal Leasehold Asset Society and what we will do with those properties. So expect to see that on a committee agenda sometime soon. If that is it for councillor reports, I'm sorry, Councillor DeMona.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance. I know I talked a lot today. I always do. Yes, Councillor Hall reminded me that we're both taking our final course towards our municipal leadership certification together. We're meeting Wednesdays in the afternoon for a couple of hours. It's the regional partnerships and collaboration. So, you know, I gotta give kudos to Councillor Hall because it's taken me 2 terms to finally get here. She's completed this in one. So like some pretty go at it effectiveness, just like our Oilers. So there we go. I like it. We're going into the finals now.
All right, thank you for that. So I will take it that is the end of councillor reports. We have a list of upcoming events. Deputy Mayor Waxer in particular for juggling plans to be available for the coffee at the activity center or the tea tomorrow afternoon with the seniors, as I have to be out of town, so I appreciate that. And I expect that some of those seniors will recognize what excited Councillor Hall so much earlier today, that it is also International Clothesline Week. So that might be mentioned tomorrow. Are there other matters upcoming that could be brought to council's attention which are not on that extensive list?
Sir, may I get a clarification on clothesline? Because I know that's a wrestling move, like when you have your arm out. Sorry, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Waxer.
I believe we have at 6 o'clock this evening, the opening of the new Pride crosswalks, and I think I know I will be attending, and there may be others as well.
Thank you for that. All right, if there is nothing else, then we substituted a new agenda item 10, which is an in-camera HR committee update. And I will turn to you, Councillor Demoda. I think it's probably safe to assume that no business will be transacted relative to that in-camera item after we return to open session.
If it goes too long, I might resign, so that.
All right, so I will, before I ask for a motion to move in camera to deal with our new live feed, know that when we will return, we won't give further notice of that. We will return only for the purpose of adjournment. So everybody else can assume that we are effectively adjourned now, but council will remain until we dispose of the in-camera session. So thank you to those who attended on our Zoom platform. And I will now invite a motion that council move in camera at 2:46 p.m. Councillor Demoda, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And we will take perhaps a 10-minute recess and then reconvene in camera.